Hey guys, today we're going to talk about pressing with two up front at the 9v9 level. So let's go. So recently, guys, I had the opportunity to chat with Bob Thompson. He is the head men's soccer coach at Boston College. And interestingly, he actually reached out to me because he's going to be taking on his son's 9v9 team. And so had a lot of questions, we talked tactics, but he brought up a really interesting point about how he was going to press, and I wanted to share that with you. Just to review, my preferred formation at 9v9 is a 4-3-1. This consists of two center backs and two fullbacks or wings along the back line, three in the midfield with a defensive center midfielder and two more attack-minded center midfielders, and a central striker. So I have the opponents here set up in a 3-2-3, and I'm sure you guys can see there's a three-man back line here, two in the midfield and three up top. And that's really the most common formation that you're going to play. And this is actually not how they're going to build out, though. The way that they typically build out, and the way that I recommend you build out if you're doing a 3-2-3, is that you would have your fullbacks here kind of come down, and they would basically be right on the edge of the 18. Central defender will kind of stay right about the arch, and then you've got the wings that are going to kind of come into this wide space. The 9 would come down, okay? So this is in general what it looks like when the other team's building up out of a 3-2-3, or what it could look like. And traditionally, what I've done is I've recommended, the press kind of be a spear starting at the 9. So the ball would come out here, and your 9 would sort of immediately come this way. The 10 would shift over, the 8 would take him, the 3 would come down onto their 7, and as the 9 shifted, the 6 would step. The center backs would have to coordinate who takes the 9, and the 2 would sort of cinch in here, and it would kind of look like this. The idea is that you're cutting their half of the field in half. So the striker is really trying to push them towards the sideline, which again is a good principle in any press. Okay, so now let's look at this, how we would set up with two up top to press. What we would do is, instead of having the single striker here, we would actually push the striker to the side and bring one of our center midfielders, our attacking center midfielders up. And the more that we talked about it, you really want this to be the same person every single time. You wouldn't want it to kind of flip-flop between the 8 and the 10 here. I really would recommend that you just keep it to one person is always up top. And so then what would have to happen is the other attacking center midfielder has to shift in. And so it really ends up looking something like this, with two attacking forwards here, and then you have a single 8 kind of in the middle, and then the 6 right behind them. So let's just say that the team you're playing actually builds out, which unfortunately this is less common. You usually get into a kickball situation depending on the league you're in or the team that you're playing, but let's just say that they do build out. So in this case scenario, whichever of the 2 up top is closest to where the ball goes immediately pressures. And that's really the advantage of this system, is that with the 2 up top, you can apply pressure a lot faster than with just 1 up top. So the ball gets played out over here, let's just say to the 2. The 9 is immediately responsible for the pressuring. The 8, who was the center midfielder, the attacking center midfielder that stayed back, is going to start pressing up this way to cover the midfielder on this side. Now, even if he comes over here, he's going to go with him, okay? The other player that was up top, the other attacking center midfielder who was involved with the pressuring of 2, slides over into this space here. You still have the scenario where our fullback is marking their wing, and it's the same situation here where the 9 comes through here, and the fullback on whichever side the ball is going down would cover the 9, okay? Now in this situation, the 6 is just going to have to kind of come up a little bit, take this space right here, looking at the 8. And the idea is really the same, that you'd see the 2 would kind of come over, is that we're trying to cut the field in half, but we're pressuring them with a lot more speed, and we get the pressure there a lot quicker. So one of the things that I really like about this is if the team's building up and they actually try switching field, so if the 2 sees that everything's kind of closed in here and tries to play this ball out either across to the other fullback or just to the goalkeeper, you have another point of attack very close, being able to kind of close that down. The 9 would slide over to grab the 4. The 2 again is going to take the wing on their side. The 6 is over here already with this 8. As the 9 comes over, the center back's going to have to communicate, and you get them in the exact same scenario that you had on the other side. And it happens very quickly. And that's really one of the advantages of having 2 up top to attack, is if that ball is moving around in the back, you're putting immediate pressure on them. So one of the things, guys, that I did want to mention, and something that I've been thinking about if you're going to press like this, is if they have a goal kick and the goalkeeper is kind of looking out, there's really 2 pockets of space that they might try to play it if they don't play it into their fullbacks, which is really here and here. And so they might try to play a ball kind of over the top or in between into this area, or again, over the top or in between into this area. And I'm not that worried about it, mainly because it's going to be a difficult ball to play, especially in the middle of the field. And even if they get the ball here, I mean, we should have immediate response to this. There's going to be a lot of congestion in that area. And even if they try to play a ball, let's say they play a ball kind of up over the top into here, you know, that's going to be a hard ball for them to bring down. And I feel like we're going to have the pressure in that area to be able to immediately attack. Or one of the fullbacks or the midfielders could step, but that could be a potential area of where the press could get broken. So it's just something that you have to be aware of, something you have to think about. So this is by far the most likely scenario that you're going to get into, which is teams just booting the ball down the field, especially if you start really giving them fits, either pressing like this or pressing the more traditional way that I usually talk about. So if you're going to play with 2 up front, how do you deal with a situation where teams are just booting the ball? There's two things. One, are they booting the ball right from the goalkeeper? So if every goal kick, they're just blasting the ball down the field, my recommendation is going to be to actually get out of this 2 up front and to get back to what we were in before, which was just the 4-3-1, and get real compact and look for second balls. Because there's really no reason to have 2 pressures up top if, you know, they're not even going to try to build out of the back. I mean, some teams will just literally like throw all their guys down here like this, and it looks something like this, even something crazy like this. There's no point in having your 2 guys up front pressing in that scenario. You're just taking players out who might actually need to be there. If, let's just say that they are playing the ball out, right? So they're playing the ball out to the center back, and then what they're doing is just blasting the ball from there. Okay, and it could be in some organized fashion. Maybe it's not organized, but eventually you end up getting something like this. This is kind of what most teams will do, is you get into a scenario like this, and then they just blast the ball, hoping to get to the 9. Maybe they try to put it up through here, hoping to get to the 7. If that's the case, I think, and I talked about it with Bob Thompson. I think what we're going to do at that point, or at least what we would try to start doing, is to keep the 2 up here. Again, we want to put pressure on their fullback. So I don't want there to be no pressure on him. He can just blast the ball down. I still want there to be pressure. So in this scenario, even if they're blasting the ball, I think we stay in the shape that we're in and press with 2, because this is going to cause a lot of problems. He's going to have to make this 2 is going to have to make a really difficult pass under pressure. I mean, he's going to have to play a 40-yard ball into the 9's feet, or a 60-yard ball that clears our fullback, and then their wing runs after it. I mean, at the youth level, at 9v9, that is extraordinarily unlikely, and when it happens, it's usually more luck than anything. So if they blast the ball down the field from their goalkeeper, we're going to retreat, go back to our 4-3-1, get compact, and look to win second balls. But if they are playing the ball out to one of their fullbacks, and then they're blasting the ball down the field, still keep this formation so we can put that immediate pressure on the fullbacks. So let's talk for a second about transitions, because I think that this is an area where your team could get a little bit tripped up if you're going to be pressing with 2 up top. So looking at this here, you can see that their 2 has gotten the ball and we put immediate pressure on them. Everybody's kind of shifted over in the way that we talked about. The 2 should actually be over here a little bit. So the 6 is over. And so let's just say they have nowhere to go, and this is going to be a common scenario where they just blast the ball down the field. All right. and let's just say it kind of rattles around and we win the ball back, our 3 wins the ball. What I see most of the time, not just in this particular situation, but in transitions in general, when it comes to youth soccer, is that once you win the ball back, there's this immediate push to go forward. And that's fine and dandy if it's actually on. But let's just say in this scenario, it's actually not on, and it looks something like this, okay? So instead of trying to force a ball into this tight space, what you've got to get your team very comfortable doing is using their goalkeeper. Our 3 needs to be able to play this ball back in here so we can all reset. Specifically, the reset has to happen in the midfield because the 10 is a lot higher than we would want in terms of attacking out of a 4-3-1 in this situation. So if we can get the ball back to our goalkeeper in our transitions and reset, that's going to be huge when it comes to attacking forward. Now, if something's on moving forward, I'm not suggesting you don't do that, but you've really got to teach your team that once you win the ball back in a pressing situation, especially in the middle of the field, if it's not on, let's not force it. Let's get the ball back to our keeper, because then the center backs are going to come over here and open up. Our 6 is going to come down. The 2 is going to get wide right here. It's kind of wide and high up the field. The 8 is going to get into a space kind of in here. And the 10, who was high when we were pressing, now sinks down into here. And the 9 comes back central. Okay? And now we are in the shape that we want to attack with. All right? You really got to talk your players through this, or the transitions could turn into this muddied mess where you're winning the ball back a lot, but then you're really not doing anything with it. You're just constantly kind of giving the ball back to the other team, or it's just, getting hit out of bounds or tackled out of bounds, and you just don't have a good, and there's really no thought process or plan on when we get the ball back. So there's a couple of ways that I recommend you go about training this. The first is pattern choreography. Those of you who watch my videos, I'm really a big proponent of this. And it starts with just a walkthrough on how you press. This can be done with mannequins, could be done with cones. If you have enough players, you could certainly do it, where basically you would just roll the ball out to the opposing center back, and you literally walk through, okay, this is where you go, this is where you go, this is where you go. You could progress that into a pressing game where you play 9v7, 9v6, depending on how many players that you had, trying to press and kind of hold them to one side of the field. The other way is to actually go through tactically how you do it. So if you have an app like I use, which is Tactical Pad, going through with your team, this is how we're going to press, this is where you would go, this is where you would cinch in. Again, we win the ball back. We don't necessarily have to force it forward. If it's not on, play it back to the goalkeeper, reset. And then ultimately, the other way that you would do this is just you have them play 9v9 in a controlled scrimmage. So you're stopping play and moving people into the positions that you want and explaining why you're doing that. Hey guys, I hope you liked that video. If you're already pressing with 2 up top at the 9v9, I'd love to hear how that's going. If you try it this fall, let me know how it works. This fall I actually have 2 primary 7v7 teams, and then I have an 11v11 team. So I do have a supplemental team that's going to play 9v9, but it's going to be a little bit harder to train them because I'm not involved in their training, 2-3 times a week. So I'm really interested to know how it goes. I'm going to touch base with Bob a little bit later this fall, see how his pressing went, kind of get some best practices, some pearls and pitfalls, and kind of see how it goes. So as always, guys, thanks for checking this out. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or hit me up in the comments.